2 of Survive Your Mind. Here we have Dr. Madeline Barlow, who is our sports psychologist. She completed her PhD at Temple University in the psychology and human movement with specialization in exercise and sports psychology. Her doctoral dissertation research allowed her to explore how athletic identity influenced the transition out of a collegiate sport and identify the tools, skills, or experiences that enhance the transition out of sport, including increasing awareness, authentic connection, and accountability. So she will speak more to her mental performance coach at Drexel. She's also we're going to talk about the mental block coach part of it too, because that is really interesting to me. She earned her bachelor's degree in psychology in 2013 from Bloomsburg University, where she was a 4-year Division II collegiate swimmer, individual and team record holder, as well as an NCAA qualifier. She also has 7 years of experience coaching USA Club and Swim League with youth athletes. So pretty impressive background. You know, I'm very excited to have her on here. She gives what I'm doing a totally different outlook and perspective and sense of credibility, I think, too, which is really important. So Madeline, I would like to start with your thoughts on mental health and how it's being treated now. Maybe before you started working with us and like where you are now with it, because I think it's really important to get your perspective on what you think is being done about mental health and then how you have been able to help and influence the 500 athletes at Drexel you work with.
Yeah. So hi, thank you for having me. Yay. So happy to be here. So when it comes to mental health in relation to athletes, I do think it's coming around, right? In particular, you see the NCAA doing more around mental health and trying to end the stigma around mental health. Because for many, many years, it was not treated the same as, say, a physical injury. Because in sport, it's very clear that you're doing things physically with your physical body, right? So that made sense. That made so much sense to people. It connected really easily. But when we talk about something that is typically unseen, right, with our mental health, we can't always see it. It's not something you can grab onto. It's not tangible. So that's been the biggest barrier for athletes in particular to get help around this, because you can't see it. Oh, what? You're fine. You're okay. You're tough. How many times have you heard you're tough?
Yeah.
Right? Push through. You got this. You're fine. Rub some dirt on it. Like, okay. And that is definitely an old school mindset, right? So as we're coming around to really recognizing this is important, this is necessary, I do feel we've taken strides, but it's something that's an ongoing process, and let's keep going. So especially at Drexel, we're lucky to have what's called our performance team, which allows us to come together and collaborate across the board with academics, strength and conditioning, nutrition, and myself in sports psychology, and really work together to provide as much support to our student athletes as possible, which is so good because it's human first, it's person first, right? And so that's been my mission, is to really allow athletes to feel supported, and when certain things come up, to find the best person for that person to get the support they really need.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know it's definitely helped our team, countless other teams at Drexel too. So first of all, thank you for what you do, because I think the difference between where we were in terms of our team dynamic and environment has changed drastically since starting to work with you. And I think that people have done a great job opening up. I think that's the biggest thing, is opening up and being more realistic with themselves versus trying to keep this image that like their teammates have of them. So I think that's been a huge change and shift in our team. So
yeah, and I'll say from my end, it has also been really cool for me to see that shift too. And you stop to think about it, and me, a woman, going into a room with 50 guys of like a very manly sport, right? Yeah. Lacrosse is a pretty manly sport, we'll put it that way. And to be able to see the group, again, have that shift and open, be vulnerable and be okay with that. Right. I even remember asking a question once, like, are you okay with being vulnerable? And more people than not said, yeah. And that's amazing. Yeah. That's what we want. That's what we're looking for. Can you open up to one another and to other support systems? Because, not everything is as we think or what we see. And so the deeper we can go, the more work we can do. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So I would like to also talk about, I wrote it down. So that final question that you brought up in our conversation, I know we emailed you about this too. This was kind of the starting point a long time ago that got me thinking about, well, we heard this about our team, I'd love to hear about other people or learn more about that situation. So during one of our sessions, the whole team sitting in a circle, and Madeline has asked us, a list of questions. And so the last one, kind of, she was like, are you guys ready for it? And we're like, I don't know, you've asked us like 6 questions. It's like, yeah, like, of course we're ready. It did get deeper and deeper as we went. But I don't think people were ready to fully dive in to what was expected. So the final question was, what is the most challenging thing, event, or situation you have faced in your lifetime? And so everyone kind of like looked at, everyone next to them for a second, because I think when I talk about mental health, people, especially, and I talk about young men more specifically, I think, like we talk about like lacrosse being masculine and that sort of thing, they were like, well, how deep do we, what I mean? Everyone was like, how deep should I go? And it was, thankfully, I think it was Jim or someone went first and was like, boom, like, let's get deep. And so that changed a lot. So I want to talk to you and ask you about like why this question, like why you chose to ask these set of questions and things like that. Yeah. So this was an activity that I have done with a previous team. I did this with a SYM team that I worked with a few years ago. And that was a mixed bag of individuals. It was girls and boys, and they were younger, but it went really well. And it was a bonding activity as much as it was for the person themselves to, again, to see where they could go with some of these questions. And like you said, they started out pretty lighthearted. I think one of the first questions was just like, what's your favorite movie? Or like, how many siblings do you have? Things like that to get people started. And especially because this is such a big group, your team in particular, it was very, very interesting and honestly one of the best days ever. It was amazing for me personally. But as we kept going, I was gauging or reading the room. Can we go there? The whole time I'm like, can we go there? Are we ready to go there? And I decided we're going to do it. We're going to go for it. And you're right. It was very cool to have the first couple people truly make that choice. Say, okay, this is where I'm going to go. And I would say, not everybody went as deep as everyone, and that is perfectly okay. But the first few people really like chose to lead. Right. It was a leadership, a display of leadership that they were able to share some of those deepest, darkest moments of their life. I remember at the end, people also said, I never would have known this about that person if we didn't do this. Never would have known. And that was really the point, right? To see if we could get you to connect deeply in this space. Because if you could connect there as a team, you can connect on the field. And I do feel that was such a good starting point for you all of getting that open line of communication and connecting more than, on the weekend, just having a couple beverages of choice, right? Because it's not the same connection. So how can we get more people to connect in this way Then you consider what's going on right now. That's a whole sidebar, right? Connection is so big. So that's why the main goal was connection. So it would translate out to all these other areas of your life and sport.
Yeah. I think the whole connection aspect of that is so important, because even there are some guys on the team who aren't as close with each other, and that happens, right?
Sure.
Especially as ages vary and things like that, position groups. But in that moment, I felt as though, and I think everyone felt this way, that you now have like a brand new connection with that person talking. And it was like, I think you said it afterwards too, like the next time we met, like that room was heavy, like that was a tough environment to sit in and like think and all that stuff. Because even the kids who you don't expect to like give you that information, right? Like there's always a few who either are not willing not to participate, but I feel like they're just kind of like step back a little bit. When those kids decided to really dive in, it was like, holy cow, like this is right, like we're learning here, like we're getting it. And so after that too, you asked name someone you want to learn more about or anything like that. And so we all listed a name, but in reality, like we have all found times to talk to each other more, not even about the thing that we said, but just in general. It was like, okay, like this person is going through it too. And this was the basis of why I started this, was that idea that you can look at someone dead in the eyes, have no idea what's going on, and you'll never know until you guys have that conversation.
Right.
So
absolutely. I mean, this is the simplest form of it, but like, don't judge a book by its cover, truly, right? Because we can put out, we have the choice of what we're putting out to the world. It's the same with even, social media, for example. You cannot look at someone's Instagram and know their life. You only know what they show you. And it's the same thing, person to person in real time, in real life. You will not know unless you just talk. You just have those conversations, you check in, you say, no, really, how are you doing? Right? Rather you get oh, I'm fine. No, but really, how are you doing?
Right.
And doing this activity, I'm so glad it, influenced you personally in that way, and hopefully the team in this way, because it just opens the door.
Yeah, it does.
It opens the door for more, and that's all we need. We need to keep connecting.
Yeah. So I've had a lot of people ask me, what the end goal for this is, right? And like where you see it going, and that's intangible to me right now. I have no idea where it's going to go. But kind of my thing was, if this just stays local and it's just like my community and my family from Drexel and my family from home, if we all learn a little bit more about each other and start to think about the fact that what we're going through, isn't unique to us, like we're all kind of going through it too. And I've had countless people reach out and say, your podcast made me like think about where I am or relate to, but also is like, can I come on and talk? And I think it's kind of given people this sense of whatever their situation they're in, it doesn't matter how big or small it is, it's how it's impacted you. And I think that's the biggest thing is like, I will never say that my situation is worse than anyone else's, because I know it's not, but it's how it impacts me, that sort of thing. So I think that's an important conversation to have too with people.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yes. It's all relative, right? Everything we experience is relative. I'm going to throw out a big word, but I think it applies really well here. That's the word trauma. So if we experience something like trauma, more often than not in society, trauma is seen as like the big stuff. Oh, you've experienced trauma if, you went to war and you lost all of your buddies right in front of your face, right? You were sexually assaulted, you were blank, right? Those big things. But really, trauma is very, very personal. If something affected you in a way that makes you feel overloaded, overwhelmed, your fight or flight turns on, basically your survival. That was trauma.
Mhm.
And so you're spot on. No one's is truly bigger than anyone else's because it's very, very personal. And so when we're able to break it down in that way, it does open the door again for people to release shame. I
Mhm.
think that's probably the other part of this is like we can feel shame, like, oh, mine's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. No, it's fine because it wasn't that. It is a big deal to you.
Mhm.
That's what matters. And are we opening that door for more people to recognize that and share their story? If that's what you can do here, that's a beautiful, beautiful thing to give to people. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I think that is really important that you bring up trauma because, you know, that idea of trauma, no matter how um like life changing or life altering, no matter how deep it was, like that event is still gonna have like generally the same impact on the person as a smaller event, we'll call it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like those horrible events that we witnessed throughout our life or those like life changing things we talked about, everyone in that room felt the same way. I think
Mm-hmm.
the biggest takeaway too when talking about um like the shame part of it is that every guy said something completely different or relatively different. You know what I mean? Like not
Mm-hmm.
the same story,
Right.
but the person who said A and the person who said B still had the same emotional feeling afterwards and the same sort of like heavy heartedness in that room. And so I think it's really
Right.
important to show that like your situation, as little of it as you think, in
Mm-hmm.
reality, everyone else is going to respond to you in a positive way. And
Mm.
that's super important to talk about as well.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, because you're right. I do remember at the end of it, I was like, oh, we could cut the tension with a knife. It was so thick,
Yeah.
right? And not even tension, but more just the heaviness. You
Yeah.
could feel it. And and that's okay. And that's why we were doing it in a supportive space, a
Mhm.
supportive environment. Um, because that's not something for anyone listening. Don't go do this activity on your own. Do it with a
Yeah.
professional, isn't what I'm gonna say, right? Because it can lead to clearly many different things, many emotions and different responses. But recognizing, yeah, the guy sitting right next to you, like I'm sure you could feel their energy, right?
Yeah.
You could feel the energy in the room. And we're all energy.
Mhm.
Everything's energy,
Mhm.
right? And if we were to say that we can't feel people's stuff, right? What people are putting off, it's not true. We can feel it,
I agree.
right? And so when we put it into words, we get it out of our bodies, out of our mouths, that energy, whatever it is, that emotion, we get it out into the universe. It does become a bit more tangible,
Yeah.
right? It takes the unseen and makes it seen.
Mhm.
And now you can do something with it,
Yeah.
right? That's the most important part. You cannot do anything with something that's unseen or repressed,
No.
pushed down. Let's get it out and then make some adjustments, make some shifts and support one another.
Yeah, I agree. And so after this exercise, we went right out to practice. So for
Mhm.
those not in the Drexel lacrosse team, what we do is, we go downstairs half an hour early before our practice, meet with Madeline, and then go right to practice, bring everything down. And now after that conversation and after we left it, it was like, all right, now go compete. And so now you leave this room and you go outside of the field and like I think everyone just kind of like taking in the people around them at that point. Like everything was a little more quiet. Everyone was still thinking and re-examining what had just happened, reevaluating that. But it was like that was probably one of the best practices we had. And I think that everyone was really in tune, in touch with themselves, and they weren't thinking
Mm,
about anything else. And
yeah.
we talk about that a lot too with you, I think, is that leave that in the locker room. Like you got to be able to put yourself and your mind on the field.
Mm,
And I think that was a huge shift in our practice was like, now everything that I'm thinking about is right here in front of me. It's my teammates, it's me, it's the coaches. And I think that was a really important step for us as a team,
mhm,
growing wise and practice wise.
mm. Yeah. And I loved how you said too, like people were in tune because that's what I say so much right now is like, can we get in tune with ourselves, our physical body, our mental, emotional body, right? All of us. And at the same time, be in tune or connected with those around us,
Right.
especially in a team environment. You need to be connected.
Yeah.
Right. That was the whole point. We said, like, if you're not connecting in this way, how are you going to connect from person to person on the field? And that's the point of your sport. It has to connect, right? The ball has to move.
Yeah.
And that's each time it's a connection. So thinking of it that way, yeah, being able to bring that connection amongst one another and to self is huge, because it's an awareness. Are you aware of yourself and others? Such a cool shift. And I saw it too. Oh gosh, it was so cool to watch.
I'm sure for you, it was cool. Yeah. I can't imagine being in your situation. Because I do think like we grew a lot and learned a lot there too.
Yeah. Very cool. And again, a big group of guys loved it. Like there was something about it, right? About being able to, this is something that I think is important for people to understand, is that we're made of all these different types of energy, but two types of that energy is a masculine side and a feminine side. We need both. And it's really more so like goals, confidence, structure, action, sensitivity, openness, connection, and intuition. And I saw both sides of that connect right there for you all. And that is super, super, super powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk more about the mental block coach side of things.
Sure. Great.
More about that, because I think the work you're doing, people can not only like relate to, but learn something from. And I think that, for people who aren't in sports, we have a really unique opportunity with you and working with you. There's a lot of people who won't ever get that. And so I think for the impact you've had on us, me, and our team, I think everyone else deserves to hear and witness and learn from you as well. So let's hear about the other work you're doing.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a play on what I'm doing at Drexel, which is what's so exciting. But I've also always wanted to build something that's mine, which is really cool. So building that business is really an incredible experience. But I've learned so much through the work I do at Drexel, and that's why I've been able to take what I do there and apply it. The reason I came to mental block coach, and let me tell you, I've changed it a million times, because the idea of like, who am I and how do I want to serve people has changed. But we all have mental blocks at some point in time. We all are doing the right things. We're taking action, and some things just don't work. And this is in sport and life after sport. So that's been a big focus of my work there, is athletes as they transition out, or they've already been out of sport for a while, and they're just in life, right? Trying to go through life and figure it out. And the reason I do this is because it comes from a personal place. I had many mental blocks. I currently am still working through mental blocks, right? Because I'm human. And even going back to the trauma piece, the end of my swimming career was traumatic for me. The moment I touched the wall and knew it was my last race, it felt like a piece of me died and left my body. It was very wild. But to the outside, people, be like, oh, she didn't do well, it's over. Like, oh, okay. It was extremely traumatic. I just broke up with the longest relationship I'd ever had, 15 years, right? So that's what led me to do the work I do, is to really help individuals who either have similar experiences, similar breakups with sport, basically, or again, are just feeling stuck, like they can't move forward through whatever it is that they're facing, in or out of sport.
Yeah, good. That's awesome. I think it's really important. I also, when you talk about swimming, it makes you reflect on. We talk about all the time that this won't last forever. Lacrosse isn't going to last forever, and it's a super hard pill to swallow.
Sure.
none of us are probably going to swallow, you know what I mean? Like none of us are going to
Sure.
swallow, but
Yeah.
it is, yeah, it's a super difficult conversation to have with yourself. And
Yeah.
if you can't have it with yourself, maybe it takes like your parents and friends and family, whatever it is, but that is a super important thing to recognize that
Hmm.
a major part of your life is now gone. I've been playing lacrosse since I was 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah.
Right. So
Hmm.
I'm sitting here at 22, like, you know, it's a major part of who I am. It helps shape me.
Yes.
Um, so that's, yeah, that I thank you for continuing this sort of mental block work, because there's a lot of people who not only can't get through it by themselves, but like don't even know where to start. Like you
Right.
don't, where do you go from here, right?
Yeah. And that's a huge aspect of the work. And again, for myself, it took me 7 years to figure out, oh, that I can ask for support, that I
Mhm.
need it on this, right?
Right.
That I haven't actually let go of swimming and of the negative experiences I had. Because let me tell you, swimming, I had amazing experiences. I loved to swim.
Mhm.
And then one day I didn't love it anymore.
Yeah.
And that is where that block really started coming in, because I had resistance to letting go of that piece of me, right? And so the athletic identity piece. Oh, I am a swimmer. I'm sure I mean, your biggest descriptor most likely is,
I'm a lacrosse player.
yeah, right. It just rolls off the tongue because it's how it is.
Who you are.
So being able to recognize that, you can change that, right? Your identity changes, it shifts, while also holding memories, of course, is really important. And also knowing, well, what are the beliefs that I learned or the lessons I learned in sport that I want to take with me into life after sport that will benefit me? And what are the things that I want to let go of
Yeah.
that no longer benefit me?
Yeah.
Right. So really, that's been a big part of the work I do with most of my clients on that end, is again around what serves me, what doesn't, and how do I rewrite those stories for myself so I can be the best version of me in life after sport.
Yeah. No, it's super important. Um, and it kind of makes me think about too, like when I went through football, I played football for 5 years, high school and eighth grade.
Hmm.
I knew that I knew since I started playing lacrosse that was going to like be my sport, right? Like I,
Hmm.
excuse me, like found something in it, whatever you want to say. But I knew that like longevity wise, lacrosse is going to be my thing.
Hmm.
So not that I didn't love football as much, obviously, there's something about Friday Night Lights that, that's totally different than any other feeling on this earth. But it was that mental block of like, after our last game, it was like, I'm never going to play football again. But I had that, okay, well, at least I get to play lacrosse. So a lot of people probably had that in high school, that last moment of clarity, like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. So I had a little tiny piece of that. And then reality was,
Mm.
oh, dude, like, you're going to Drexel, baby, like, get this thing going. And so
Yeah.
I haven't really truly gone through that yet. And with a redshirt freshman year in COVID, like, I still have 3 years of eligibility. You know what I mean?
Oh, wow.
Like I still have 3 years if I want to use it, if I want to go to grad school, whatever I want to do,
Sure.
if I use it all. And I still have this year, next year at Drexel.
Hmm.
But it's like, you know, that window, or excuse me, my window's been extended, but
Yeah.
that idea of like things being over is now getting pushed further. And so it's like
Mm.
culminating thing that keeps building and building in adversity with COVID and a redshirt and an injury. And it's like it keeps getting further away. And it's what if it happens tomorrow, right? Like, I
Sure.
think that's a big thing I think about too, is that this idea keeps getting pushed further away when in reality, like it's right there, it's,
Mm.
you know, it's there and I'm not ready for it, but
Yeah. And that's a hard piece of it. And, all this research that I did, that's one thing that did not come out of it, is when is the right time to start preparing yourself for that, right? Because it's one, going to be different person to person for
right,
sure. And two, it's tricky because, yeah, do you really want to think about what's after when you're in it, right? Like that seems kind of counterproductive.
right,
And I speak about a lot about like being in the present moment, right? And so planning for the future is not the
yeah,
present moment. Um, And yet there are certain things you can focus on or work on throughout that will translate out. And so I think you mentioned those in my bio, which were, I mean, connection is one of those. Feeling connected and finding ways to maintain connection, whether it's with teammates or whether it's with people outside of sport, huge, right? Can you maintain that feeling of connection to other people with whom you share things? You share goals, you share values, you share all of that. And then also like keeping that accountability and things for what, especially when it comes to exercise, because I'm just going to tell everybody right now, things change when you're not an athlete anymore. It's not as easy to just casually go work out for 3 hours. It doesn't happen. But still finding what you like to do is another, like, what do you like? What do you enjoy? Learn that now.
Yeah.
Right. Learn what you like to do in terms of movement and other activities that's outside of your sport. Make room for it now. So that way it will translate. That's something that, gosh, it's taken me years to figure out what I liked outside of swimming. So those are the 2 tips for now I'll give to people. But anyone listening that wants help with that, come hit me up and we'll talk about it more.
Obviously, I'll tag Madeline in my Instagram when I post this. Go check out her page. It's phenomenal. She does a lot of great work. I think it's really helped me just kind of taking a peek at it, and it sort of helps navigate like what you're going through. It kind of gives you a sense of like the point of this, you're not alone, all that stuff. So I've done a lot of asking questions more specific about your work. Is there anything else about what you do that you want to talk about or bring up, or any points? I know you've mentioned a lot, but I feel like your work is so vital and important that if we miss something, I would be upset if people didn't get out of this.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I want to highlight the final thing you just said, which is we are not alone. You are not alone, right? Whoever you is, who I'm speaking to right now, you are not alone. And it does happen to be one of those, I feel, conditioned beliefs that we get being an athlete of like, you're tough, you can do it, like figure it out, make it work. And that gets misconstrued as, well, you can do it on your own. And not to say that you can't, right? It is possible, but gosh, it's a lot nicer to do these things with support. Right. Whoever that support is, a friend, a coach, right? There's the key. As an athlete, you're not doing things alone. You have teammates, you have a coach. And when we get out of sport, we're like, oh, I'm all alone. So that I'm a tough athlete. I can do this on my own. Let go of some of that toughness. It's okay. You don't need to be all tough. It's fine. And really recognize that's a great time to maintain support, find it elsewhere, because you're not alone. So many people experience whatever it is. I mean, it's all different, but we all experience different levels of whether it's an actual mental health issue, right? Like clinical anxiety, depression, things like that. And I'll share here, I have anxiety. I manage it every day. I've learned how to manage it. It doesn't totally go away, right? But we learn how to manage it. And now I can sit in front of you. I'm not sweating. You can see that I'm not sweating. Whereas the first time I met with you guys, I was so sweaty because I was so nervous. That was anxiety.
Yeah, of course.
Right. And so when you learn to deal with what you have, what you experience, right? Because I am not anxiety. I experience anxiety. When you learn to navigate that through support, through, a teacher, coach, friend, family, it's going to allow you to show up in your life with so much more presence and find joy, which is my favorite emotion ever. Finding joy and sometimes peace, which is a pretty cool place to be. So that's how I'll leave it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you've given a lot of great words, some great advice here. Any last thoughts, remarks, opinions that you want to leave people with these usually drop like Sunday, Monday, kind of like start your week, or just kind of like a anything like that?
Ah, well, actually, I just gave myself it. Take a breath,
Mhm.
especially right now, right? The number one thing I've been doing for myself personally, but also with clients and athletes, is helping them and myself to take a breath,
Mhm.
take a moment, spend some time on yourself. It's not selfish. And even if it is selfish, being selfish isn't bad.
No.
That's actually the better point. It's not bad
Yeah.
to look inward, to take some time for you,
Yeah.
because without you, what is it, right?
Right.
There's nothing there if you're not taking care of you. So right now, especially with all that's going on in the world, but this also goes for when all these things aren't going on in this way in the world, find some time to sit, to meet with yourself, right? Even if it's 5 minutes a day, and just breathe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. I was talking to one of my friends last week, and we kind of got deeper into talking about like the struggle of like waking up and going to class and
Mm.
practice and things like that. And it kind of turns into a downward spiral of like unmotivation and things like that. And
Yeah.
my advice to her was, get up 10 minutes early, 5 minutes early each morning, and like check your phone for a minute and then put it down. Just kind of like sit and be present for a minute. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
sit and not have anything going on, but just like
Yeah.
breathe and be present and be like aware of who you are. Don't
Yes.
think about the hardships you're going through. Like, don't think about those things. Just like you're here, you're alive, right? And
Yeah.
take that in, and we can start to appreciate, no matter how hard it is right now, like the gift of life is something that can be taken away from you like that. And like just be
Mm-hmm.
present and be happy with who you are for a minute a day.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's such a good point. It doesn't take much, right? We can devote a minute.
Mhm.
If you have only a minute, devote a minute.
Yeah.
And really just, the practice you're referring to is called grounding, right? Just ground yourself in that moment. Just be there where your feet are, right? So that's something I recommend to people. If you want to do that, like sit in a chair or on your bed, put your feet on the floor and just tune into your breath. Just be right there with yourself. It is challenging sometimes if you're not used to meeting with yourself in stillness. I will say that. So again, to anyone listening, if that's something you want support on, you want some guidance around how to ground and to get better at being with yourself,
Mhm.
right? Please reach out. It's something that we can work on together. But such a good practice. I love that you gave that recommendation to her. Super cool. Yeah, so good.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I
Of
think
course.
it'd be super, super helpful to people. I wanted to start with me first because I felt as though like if I'm not honest, then I can't expect people to come on to be honest. But
Sure.
I wanted to have you on before I talk to anyone else who wanted to come on, because you give such a perspective and an educational side of things that I think a lot of people can take away from, and then people coming on hopefully can relate to what you're saying and talk about how it's helped them,
Yeah.
after listening.
Perfect. Love it. Yeah. No, I love this. I'm so proud of you. I have to say that actually. I'm super proud that you're choosing to do this. I think this is incredible. It's so needed. And again, it's bringing people together around similar things, which is, okay, how are we feeling?
Right.
As my first question to teams and to athletes, how are you feeling today? We need to check in more. And so by doing this, and giving people a platform to speak about their experiences too, you're going to change some lives. I'm going to say that.
Hopefully. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Madeline's Instagram will be tagged in this, and thank you for your time. And I'm really excited for you to hear what you have to say. This is going to be.
Thank you for having me. So fun.